Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridantastohya Badhrani Vidhunvati Suritsatam Srinkatam Swagata Krishna Srinkatam Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridantastohya Badhrani Vidhunvati Suritsatam
Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Swagata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana Hridayantasya Badrani Vidunoti Suhitsatam
Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Swagata Krishna
Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Swagata Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantasya Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam
Those who have developed the urge to hear the message of
Those who have developed urge to hear the message of
Swagataha
His own words
Krishna
Personality of Godhead Punya Virtues Shravana Hearing Kirtana Chanting
Hridayantastaha
within one's heart He
certainly
Badrani
desire to enjoy matter Vidunoti
Surit
benefactor Satam of the truthful. Translation. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear the messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Purport. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are not different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, in that he has endowed his innumerable names with the same potency. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that he can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound. But, unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name and activities. As we have already discussed, developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. And he sees that the devotee is completely sincere and gaining admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire.
Wow.
Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are products of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Women and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements, and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. To become restless in the contact of women and wealth is not an astonishment, because every living being is associated with such things from remote time, practically immemorial, and it takes time to recover from this fallen nature. But if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually he realizes his real position. By the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances, and gradually all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Salakaya Chakshuram Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Bhagavatam Dharati Swapadantikam Vande Dhyam Shri Guru Shishna Parakam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sarvaratam Saharam Tam Sajivam Savadvaitam Savadvaitam Parijam Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Saranam Saranam Shri Vishakam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this verse, this thing is slipping away. Let me put my jacket on. So this verse and the verse previously in the next string of verses they pretty much give like the understanding of how to advance in Krishna consciousness on the path of Bhakti Yoga. And they it's been encapsulated and small and short from just starting off to perfection. And these verses also were quoted by Srila Prabhupada in one of his prayers, and I believe coming to America. And so there's some like that. This particular verse starts off Shrinvatam Swakataha Krishna. So Shrinvataham probably is the definition of those who develop an urge to hear the messages of. But the specific urge and the foundational principle of this whole verse is Krishna. Because people are very much eager to hear messages of, but apparently of not Krishna, or I don't know, of Sanskrit, maybe all Krishna, not Krishna. So they develop an urge to hear their own words, the glorification of themselves, of their family, of what's going on, with this baseball team, football team, basketball team, what's going on in this person's life, the latest television show. So they have that urge to hear. And as a result of hearing of that, we can understand that the inverse of this verse comes to light. So the desire not to hear of Krishna, to hear of mundane things of this world, the desire for material enjoyment increases, and just the heart becomes more and more dirty when one's urges to hear such things are cultivated. And they're very, what's a better one, opposite word for virtuous? I would guess, unvirtuous, but that is thinking of a different word. So, inauspicious when properly heard and chanted, or improperly heard and chanted. Anyways, so this is another angle to look at that. So, this process of hearing and chanting is the means by which one can develop pure devotional service. And it's a principle that should be stressed often. I mean, we hear it often, but it's repetition of a good thing is important, so the subject matter is known thoroughly. So for things to stick sometimes, because it's, in this day and age, I mean, we hear something once or twice, and sometimes it really doesn't click, or we think that we know or we understand. But we hear these things over and over again to remind us, because the mind and the intelligence in this age of Kali is not so clear, and is not up to top performance. So this repetition helps us to solidify the understanding enunciated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So this next verse, which is also a very good verse and which is chanted regularly in Bhagavatam, makes the point by regular attendance and regular hearing that this regulation daily brings about, brings about firm faith. One becomes firm in his faith. So the beginning of having firm faith in one's spiritual position comes from regular hearing. And the desire to hear, as was being stated in the previous verse, comes from rendering service to devotees. So we can understand, well, if we want to have a taste, or we want to have more of a taste, as was being spoken yesterday, that we can serve those who already have a taste, or those who are already well versed in the art. I mean, even in any aspect of life, if one is going to learn some particular field or some particular artwork or whatever it may be, one goes to a person to learn. Just like I used to study music, so I had music teachers who would teach me, and they were good. Otherwise, good in them. They were good. They were learned and they understood the subject matter, and because they understood, they were able to teach me. If they didn't understand, which I had one music teacher that he didn't understand what he was doing. He couldn't. He didn't really teach any of the students much of anything. He was learning as he was teaching the students. He was like a lesson or two ahead of them on piano. And so what happened was that a student in the class was way more advanced than him, so he didn't really learn much of anything. He just kind of, floated in the class. And he wasn't so interested anyway. So to learn it, so we can, and the thing also too, that's a material example, but even in the process of Krishna consciousness, someone may be around maybe less time than us, or may know less than us, or whatever, but we can still learn from that individual also. Because the qualities that devotee displays and the surrendering process to Krishna are foundational principles which can be inspired by all devotees of all levels to help us surrender also. So it's not like, what I've been practicing, guitar, piano, whatever instrument for 30 years, and therefore I have nothing to learn from you. That can be true in the material world to a degree, but in Bhakti Yoga that is not true. Because every week we can learn something from everybody if we're willing to be humble, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita, in this verse 15, I think 5. Let's see, it's bookmark here. Is it 15:5? Yeah, 15:5. So this verse is a very nice verse. It gives some of the different qualities of surrendering. So it says, I'll just read the translation. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are free from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who are unbewildered, know how to surrender to the Supreme Person, attained to that eternal kingdom. And Prabhupada starts off by saying, the surrendering process is very nicely described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride. So, pride is a very obnoxious obstacle to overcome the process of clear consciousness. Prabhupada also says in the purport, when one is free from the delusion of pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. So, Prabhupada in this purport, for the most part, just stresses on that point of pride, which he translates here as, so nirmama, so nirmana. So mana, false prestige, nir without. So one who is without false prestige can surrender very nicely. But the problem is that we're very falsely proud of whatever it may be. I mean, it could be anything. What is it? Pauper's proud of his penny or something, as some saying. So people are very proud of whatever, it may be or whatever they may have, despite so many different disqualifications. I remember growing up, some of you people might know, there was a famous show called American Idol.
Yeah.
It was done here. So people would go in and they would perform and they would sing, the hit songs to be the #1 singer in America, to be the American Idol, which is so prestigious. Who wants to be the Bangladesh Idol or the Tibetan Idol? The best, but the American Idol, so much prestige comes with that. Anyways, so my family would watch this religiously, and like so many other things that I was exposed to growing up, just by walking back and forth in the house. So this show, people would come and sing. So many people would come and sing, and they were just so ridiculously awful. And then the people that were judging them would laugh and just say, you're not going anywhere. But those people that would come, at least initially would think that, okay, like they would be in this whole illusion about how they're such a great singer, and they're going to go and they're going to be approved by these people, and maybe I'll be #1 and I'll be the American Idol. And they weren't so good, and there were so many people, and they would just laugh, and then they would get their dreams crushed, and then reality would come. And then there's that famous saying also that it's folly to be wise when ignorance is bliss. So people in the bliss of this ignorance, thinking that they're good at this or whatever it may be, very prideful, whatever it could be. That's very blunt, maybe I would say, gross sense of pride, that when one is obviously not good at something, he very puffed up thinking he's great. And there's so many different examples of this. In the intellectual sphere, people think they know, this and that, know so much, and they can't be taught anything, or like in that way. It's mentioned music previously. Generally in age also, if one is older, he thinks, what does this young person have to teach me? I'm so experienced. I've been around, that generally, on book distribution, people generally say that one to me a lot. Oh, you show me a book on meditation or whatever. I've been doing meditation since before you were born, And it's like, well, I'm not trying to teach you anything. I'm just trying to give you a book that was around before you were born. But anyways, they don't, they're caught up. How can one who is younger than me be trying to give me something? That is there also. We see in the Bhagavatam that when I forget the king, but when Hiranyakashipu was instructing his mother, he gave the reference of a pastime he heard from Yamaraj, I believe. But Yamaraj came in the form of a little baby and began to instruct these queens that were lamenting over the death of their husband. And Prabhupada makes the purport that everybody loves philosophy, but he says, I'm paraphrasing, he says everybody loves your philosophy, especially from a little baby. So this Yamaraj took the form as a child and spoke philosophy, and these women were very much amazed. So that aspect is there also. People love to hear something wonderful or see something wonderful, especially from one who is young and is expert in that field, and then they can learn. there's also prodigies and things, children that are very expert in some particular musical field, or mathematics also, or things of this nature. And in devotional service also, we see great devotees like Bhakti Sangha Saraswati and Srila Prabhupada, specifically previously, and I'm sure other devotees also within the movement, who displayed tremendous devotional attributes from a young age. It's also delineated with Parikshit Maharaj in the birth of all the great qualities that he had. So the surrendering process, so we're trying to surrender. This verse is encouraging us to surrender, but we have to lose the puffed up mentality and the pride. Prabhupada says in, I believe it's Canto 7, Chapter 9, Text 8, like the last paragraph or so, that for one who is not humble and meek, spiritually, one will find spiritual life very difficult. So this humbleness and meekness brings down the propensity that we have to think that Krishna's property or God's property is my own property, or the glorification that is meant for Krishna is meant for me. So this also too, we're speaking of gross pride. Subtle pride could just be wanting distinction or adoration from others. Be wanting people to do something and thinking we want people to not only to recognize this great thing that we have done, but to also sing our glories and to praise us. We take very much pride in that. You know, I'm doing this worship of the deities as service, so we can be up there thinking, people will recognize, how great I'm doing this arti, how many times. I do the perfect amount of circles every single time. I'm always on time, so people recognize that. And then this can creep into one's consciousness, and then it totally becomes transformed and morphed to service of Krishna, to I'm being recognized by the devotees, and the glorification for Krishna is being shifted. And anyways, one who is worshiping the deity is foolish to think that people are recognizing him. People go and see the deity, and then they, to see the deity and worship the deity. And then the pujari is thinking, people recognize how great I am. That's how much Maya one can be in. But anyways, it can be in so many different aspects of Krishna consciousness. I've had my share of experiences. You distribute a lot of books, and then it's like to name the scores, and it's like, I did so many big books yesterday, and it's like everybody's gonna see it, or whatever it may be. There's so many different avenues. It's just that one element. It's just like salt or something. So you add salt, and it pervades the salt has the same taste, but it pervades all the different preparations similarly. So this pride, when it's added to our consciousness, pervades all the different aspects of devotional service similarly. And then it's looking for the adoration always. It's right. I'm there to hear that glorification. And then when that glorification is not there, one becomes angry, or when it's chastised, one becomes furious. How dare, I'm such a great person. Why doesn't anybody recognize, this? So these are weeds that come up as one is practicing devotional service. I believe these are described, maybe, I'm not too sure because I haven't read the book, but what is it, Madhurya Kadambi? Yeah, I believe these different things are described as things that one approaches when one takes up devotional service. Some of these different things that come up. So this is something to be careful of. So the whole, one aspect of Krishna consciousness, big aspect is that we're trying to surrender. So if we can kind of curb that pride, the best thing to do is to understand. We can maybe display some pride, and then if we understand, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that, or I was acting in that way, or I was pretty prideful in that way, we recognize it, and that's good, and then we can work on it. And we say, well, next time, I got to use my intelligence to not act and behave in such a way. And we can also too, just like previously, we can see devotees that are, displaying the quality of humility very nicely, and we can see how they act in certain circumstances, and we can reflect on that and think, well, I need to act like this devotee or be like this devotee, And there's different devotees that come to mind that that I've seen that are very humble and like that way, and we could pray and we can see that, and they inspire me to be humble also. And book distribution also is good for being humble, at least the speaking with different individuals, because some people, they'll say whatever they'll say. they'll go and say you're in a cult or what you're doing is wrong, you're going to hell. I mean, you can argue, but then, you know, some people there's no point in just arguing with because they're beyond reason. So then one just takes it, whatever. Yeah, you know, this guy's calling me stupid or telling me to get out of here. What can be done? You know, I'll just swallow this and keep going forward. So this humility plays an intrinsic part in Krishna consciousness. So much so, the Lord Chaitanya said that this is one of the qualities for one who wants to chant unendingly, without satiation, and also to have taste. So this humility we can learn from others if we have it. This meekness we can learn. So many different things here. So let's see. So just going to read some other things, but let me think here. So some other, I'll just kind of go to some of the other main points here. Let's see here. So the urge to hear. So initially, so we're subduing the pride that we may have. So if we're attempting to do that, Krishna will see and Krishna will help us. I mean, it's described in this verse that Krishna is ready to help out. He's more than willing to help us. So we have to make steps in that direction. So we can, one big thing to understand, or it's brought up, so is it our endeavor or is it Krishna's mercy? Do we work hard and do different things? Do we chant extra rounds and do we fast on Ekadasi and do these different things? And then this is how we get Krishna's mercy. And then this is for sure. So I've done these different activities and Krishna's entitled to give me the mercy. It's not necessarily done like that. Krishna is not obliged to actually reciprocate with our endeavors. But if he sees us endeavoring, he will reciprocate because he sees us trying to come closer to him. But if we have a mentality, see, this mentality is very important. If we have a mentality, we think, I'm doing these different things, so I'm going to get Krishna's mercy and I'm entitled. And Krishna will not give the mercy. But if we're doing these different things, we're thinking, let me try to move towards, purification. Let me try to absorb myself more in the process of Krishna consciousness. Krishna will see that this person is serious, so let me help him. And then there will be some taste here. And we can see that the contaminated things are drifting away from in our heart. We can reflect and we can think, maybe we'll be thinking, it's easy to think sometimes we've been in the process of Krishna consciousness or whatever, that, I've been around for so many years and it just seems like I'm not really going anywhere. We should be honest. We should see that we're making steps towards the goal, but we can also, we can see that, well, when I first joined and where I'm at now, it's like, man, it's like, where I'm practically, I'm doing a lot better when I first started. I wasn't hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, I wasn't chanting, I wasn't engaged I was just in nonsense, and now I'm engaged in these activities, and I'm associating with devotees, and life is definitely a lot more Krishna conscious. And we can kind of see that, and that can be inspiring to us also. Prabhupada says, I believe it's Canto 6, Chapter 2, around text 30 or so, maybe text 34, in relation to Ajamya reflecting about how, after the Vishnudutas left, he was just realizing how what a stupid decision I made and how wicked I was that, I left devotional service and just engaged in chasing after a prostitute. And I acquired so many different nasty qualities. So he makes this determination that therefore, that I've attained this position, let me not fall back down again into entering into sinful life, and let me go forward in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada makes a point in that for that individual who he should, the individual in Krishna consciousness should reflect, it should realize where I'm at now and where I was previously, and with firm determination should understand his position and not fall back down into the material life. And so we should reflect in that way, and that may give us some push to drive forward. But this urge ultimately is to hear the message is going to become from serving the devotees, as stated previously. And when we actually have an urge for the message of Krishna consciousness, then the subject matter will stick very nicely. So then when we hear the Bhagavatam, we'll have a taste and we'll want to be here. And we'll want, when we read also, we'll retain the information more because we're inspired to hear. I know even reading Bhagavatam with different devotees and things. I mean, I read some different things like years and years ago. But I remember, what we read and the different pastimes, and everything kind of stuck more because that urge was there and that association was there. And things just stuck very nicely. And there's different things in the Bhagavatam and in proper purpose that have stuck due to being spoken of in classes and associating with devotees, or of different experiences that I've had that have solidified the information and have made an impact on my heart because that urge was there, and Krishna allowed that realization to come. So another aspect which stuck out to me, maybe I'm going to go to the second point, which is important also. I'll speak on this maybe towards the end, the point that the Lord is more anxious to take us back than we desire. But one of the points I want to talk about, which Prabhupada makes a big point in here, he talks about that one of the difficult aspects. The other part of the verse is that by hearing, these dirty things in the heart are cleansed away. So the aspect to understand is that we have these dirty things in the heart, which are holding us back in the surrendering process and causing us some headache. So Prabhupada makes the point that those main things are money and wealth. So specifically sex life and accusation of money. They're difficult problems for the devotee, making progress in the path back to Godhead. So when one is trying to come out of the material energy, there's different allurements given to stumble one. And there's very many different histories in the Vedic literatures of people who fell to the attraction of women and wealth. Generally women, because many of the stories given in the Shastras are of men on the path of self-realization. So the general understanding of women is understood. But for anybody, just to be attracted to the opposite sex unnecessarily or too much makes the progress on spiritual life very difficult, because it increases the conceptions of I, me, and mine and expands the material field. Previously in Vedic times, when one would get married, one would then acquire some land and then would acquire would have to work on that land, and then there would be children and then maybe animals, cows and things like that. And the natural tendency in a situation like that is to think that this is my land and this is my family, this is my house, this and that, and then one continues to think in terms of I, me, and mine. Whereas when one is not married and one is living the life of a brahmachari, one may have these different things, but he has a couple things. He may have some cloth, or like I have this bag, and I think, well, this is my bag. And if somebody needs to use the bag, it's pretty easy to give it up because it's like, well, it's just a bag. It's easy to understand the impermanent nature of this bag. But when one is living in the Grihastha ashram, and he may not be, depending on one's level of advancement, generally that situation it can be very difficult. But it's easier to get caught up in the attachment of things and to be caught up in the flow of the world, especially in this time and these day and age, when one has to live in the city and one has to work these different jobs, and most of the association is bad association, and having to come up to social standards and to maybe interact and celebrate different things that are not so conducive to Krishna consciousness. So these things can be difficult problems. So generally, as recommended in the Shastras, best to just avoid such things, because one that stays as a brahmachari and does not marry, and ultimately maybe take the vow of sannyas, maybe formally or informally, doesn't have a need for associating with women so much, or acquiring so much wealth, because there's no need so much for money. I mean, the basic necessities of life are very simple. I was listening to Prabhupada the other day, and he was saying, you stay at brahmacharya, what is the difficult? All you need is a little prasad here and there, you sleep on the ground, and life is easy like that. I know last year when I went to India, I mean, maybe practically just the whole coming to Krishna consciousness, let's speak specifically about that travel in India. But in that travel in India was really, really austere last year. I went to Sri Rangam for Shravanam Kirtanam camp with my Guru Maharaj, but we came in really late, and we went and saw Raghunath, which was good, and we came back, and I realized when I got there that I had left my mosquito net because there were so many mosquitoes. There were so many mosquitoes that it was so difficult for me to get to sleep. They were constantly landing on me and biting me. I was just laying there, and I was thinking, oh man. And I had my dhoti over me, but they were just, and it was like barely covering. And it was, we were there for three days, but it was just like I couldn't get to sleep, until I just was so exhausted from the mosquitoes that I just knocked out. And I was so tired in the morning and this and that, and whatever. It was an austerity. And then I don't think too there was like bedding. I think it was like sleeping on the tile or whatever with like a dhoti also. And I think I had with three dhotis, one that I wore, one that I slept on, then one that was covered me. So that was my complete dhoti set was being used. So it's good to travel with 3 dhotis. So anyways, that was going on. And so my other friend who was there, who was married, he had to run around constantly to make different arrangements for his wife because there was mosquitoes and she just couldn't tolerate it. So he had to go here and he had to try out different things like that and get this repellent and that repellent, and it was too austere for her and this and that. I mean, which is understandable. So he was busy, kind of running around taking care of this thing, and I was just having to tolerate it. And then the conditions I also lived in too. I mean, it was like there was like 20 other guys living in the room. Like there was, it was pretty simple. And so he had to deal with that whole thing. And I mean, it's, if he's married, this is his duty. But I mean, there was time that was put into that. He was in the Dham and he had to take care of these different needs. And this is his duty, but it's the duty, and also the one to marry is not intrinsic in itself spiritual. There's nothing intrinsically spiritual about getting married. It can be spiritualized, but it's not spiritual. As in chanting Hare Krishna is a pure spiritual process. As reading the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is pure. There's different things that we dovetail in Krishna consciousness, and those are one of those things also. It's mentioned in the 11th canto that the allowances are there for gambling, intoxication, meat eating, and sex life. And I believe it talks about the purport that these things ultimately aren't needed. But the conditions allow these propensities, so they can be regulated, and one can come to the platform if one regulates it properly and does his duty, does his dharma, and the mode of goodness, one comes to knowledge. And then when knowledge is arisen, renunciation comes, which is natural, and then one can give up very nicely. And that is the Vedic understanding of Varnashram. And Prabhupada would often quote that at the age of 50, one should give up household life and enter into the forest. So enter into the forest doesn't mean to go into the woods as in these day and age. Go into the forest means to come back and to engage oneself fully in preaching Krishna consciousness. So these things are difficult. Vedic gives so many injunctions and understanding of regulating and properly separating the association between male and female so much, because when men and women get together, sometimes an energy is produced that is unneeded for spiritual realization. So that is there, and there's different histories given of different people who are advancing spiritually who had difficulties on the path due to that. And we could see also, I mean, even in the mundane sense, there's the famous example of not Cleopatra, but Clinton, Bill Clinton.
He was caught. Anyways, let me get to the whole story. But he got busted for associating. Cheating on his wife and associating with another woman, and that caused a lot of havoc in his political career. And he lied about the whole thing, and it was a big thing, and whatever. I mean, that was probably in the 2000s. So I remember hearing about that. I was probably like 10 or so, or something like that. And so that was a big thing. He lied about that. And so that made his political career very difficult. And there's other examples also. That's probably most famous. I don't know the whole history of everybody of that. So that is there. And so also too, so it's described that we've been associated with such things as time and more. So wealth also. So the saying is that money is sweeter than honey. And so, people, they're so anxious, to get money and to have a lot of money and to protect the money. And wealth also, it can be translated in different ways. It may not necessarily be like a $100 bill or $1,000. It can be a big house, or it can be a very nice car. People are working so hard to get these sports cars. But what's the point of a sports car? The point of a sports car is to just show it off. That's pretty much it. You get a very nice car, a Lamborghini. Or a big Hummer. Hummer is very good understanding, because the Hummer is so expensive. You get what at like maybe 7 miles a gallon. It's really there's no economic value in buying a Hummer for gas. It's so big, it's so expensive. But then people think, I drive a Hummer H3 or whatever, and it's so big, and everybody sees me coming down the street, and when I drop the kids off to school, they see the Hummer, and they think, I have money, and then someone takes pride in that. And then, when you have this car, then you're thinking, oh man, someone may hit my car, or run into the back of it, and then run away, and then, how will I do it? The pain is chipped. The people, especially, I can only imagine with these Lamborghinis or these cars they import from overseas, they must be in so much anxiety, thinking, they, how to protect the car, whatever. I remember one devotee that joined for some time when I was in San Diego. He was like older gentleman, and he came around. He was coming around, and he moved into the temple for some time. And I was speaking with him, and he had some sports car, and he was in so much anxiety at the temple about this sports car. He had to like park it in the devotee spot, and he had to cover it, every day. And he was in so much headache about this car, always thinking about it. But he did dovetail that in Krishna consciousness, because he would drive me to Harinam in a big fancy sports car. I forget which kind it was. It was some type of convertible. I don't know. It was really fancy. And it was, the top came down, and he would take me to Harinam. So I got to drive in a sports car. And that was utilized for Krishna service. But unfortunately, we don't buy sports cars to use in Krishna service. If we have them already, we can use them, but we don't get them to use. So this way, and then maybe jewels also, one can have a lot of jewels. But then we can also understand this too, even for kings, in previous times. So Maharaj Pariksit, for instance, was a very great king. Generally kings, they're in contact with a lot of wealth, a lot of women, all these big things which can entangle one very immensely. And generally they gave that up also, and they went to the forest, and they practiced Krishna consciousness. So these things may be there because we're not completely pure. We may come in contact with different things that cause us some uneasiness in Krishna consciousness, or cause us to maybe make focusing on Krishna very difficult, which is natural. So those things that distract us from Krishna, very simple. We try to avoid them as much as possible, and not try to put ourselves in a situation that's so much unnecessarily. And so this is also to understand the surrendering process, which is I wanted to read from here. I'll wrap up here pretty soon. I'll read this in a second. So these things are there. We can understand, we can see. And we also too have to understand, because some things may cause us agitation more than others, because we're all individuals and we all have our different ways that we like to lord it over, and different things that we're struggling with. So someone may struggle, like was being previous, Krishna Kripa was making a very good point yesterday, which was, I've been thinking about a lot, And to kind of bring it back to the beginning, that different devotees excel in different areas. Some devotees are very good and have a very strong taste for chanting the holy name. There's this one devotee I'm thinking of very much, he's got a very strong taste for chanting, and whenever I hear him chant, it's like, just thinking about him chanting, and it just makes me feel Krishna conscious. He's one of my godbrothers. His name is Chidahari, and he chants so nicely, and he's just so absorbed. And because he has that particular opulence of Krishna, those people he comes in contact with, he gives that to him. And he's also a teacher in the Gurukul. And so those boys develop that taste for chanting. And whenever I go to India, I think I try to be in his kirtan specifically. If I hear him chanting in the evening or whatever, I just try to be there. And just by his association, there's this song called, I think, Mother Ashtakam, which is by Vallabhacharya, talking about the sweetness of Krishna, how Krishna is sweet in this way, his gopis are sweet, it's everything. It's just about how sweet Krishna is. Mm-hmm. And it's such a very, very beautiful song. And the first time I heard it, he was chanting it one evening. And he told me I should read it, afterwards. And it was just, he chanted it so nicely that it really stuck with me. And so when I got back to the States, I found that song and just downloaded it, and then just listen to it all the time, and then read it also, and then chant it periodically also. So this is it. It's not. I'm not. I'm nobody. But just by the association of this devotee, he made me more Krishna conscious. So now it's like, I got all these different tunes running in my head, and some of the different, and just that association, and that made me want to chant more, and then chant this song. And that's how it happens. And I would just go in just to be in his kirtan. It wasn't like thinking like I'm going to go in his kirtan, I'm going to serve him in this way or whatever. It would have been good if I had the mentality, let me go and help assist him in his kirtan. But I was just a little greedy because I like his chanting. And so in that way, and there's so many different examples. That we can all think of, and I think of myself, of different devotees that displayed some unique attribute in Krishna consciousness, and by associating with them, that rubbed off. So association is key. Sangat santayate kama. So we develop desires by association. So that goes both ways. By bad association, we develop bad qualities, and by good association, we develop good qualities. So if we want to become more Krishna conscious, we associate with those who are already Krishna conscious and try to serve them whatever way. And it could be 5 or 10 minutes here or there, 20 minutes, but we have that urge, it'll make an impression on our chitta, on our consciousness. And then and when it makes an impression on our consciousness, and we reflect on it, and then it'll help us act on it also. So, and then to tie this up. So Krishna is willing to help us. So these different things that we have going on in our heart, whatever it may be, Krishna will help us. So Prabhupada makes a good point. So he says, the Lord is more anxious to take us back to his kingdom than we desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. So we may think, that's Prabhupada saying most of us don't desire, but we can also, we all desire to go back to Godhead. I'm sure all the devotees desire to go back to Godhead. But when we actually examine what does it take to go back to Godhead, you're just like, if you want to go back to Godhead, or, it's not intrinsic in itself, but Prabhupada gave a process, You chant 16 rounds daily, you rise early for the morning program, you follow these different regulative principles, and like that way. And then we could say, who wants to go back to Godhead? Everybody wants to go back to Godhead. Who wants to get up every single day at 4 a.m.? The hands start going down. Who wants to surrender in this way? The hands start going down. So everybody wants to go back to Godhead, but not everybody wants to actually do what is necessary to go back to Godhead. So in that way, we're not so eager to actually go back to Godhead when we examine it. But if we try to follow that, Krishna will help us. Because we may not be, perfect in all spheres or whatever. There may be some, we don't get up every single morning, or, whatever. We may have some layover rounds from the other day, or, we have some space out days or something. We may not be we may have some lackings, which is understandable. But if we understand we have some lackings and we work on that and we pray to Krishna, Krishna will help us. Prabhupada saying right here, Krishna will help in all respects. He says it a couple times in this paragraph. Krishna is more anxious for us to come back than we are. So if we do that, then Krishna will help us in all respects, very much. So let's see here. And then it becomes easy. And Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita that those who, slipping. Anyways, but I'll just paraphrase. But Krishna says that those who are engaged in worshiping with love and devotion, for them, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. And so Krishna can help us out so much if we're just willing, if we just take that first step. Krishna is willing to help us so much. And then the process becomes very easy. I mean, the process of Krishna consciousness is, I believe it's stated in the one of the first verses. But the process is simple, but the application is difficult. So the application becomes easy when we use our intelligence. So I believe there's a saying, Prabhupada said, and I may get it wrong, I was thinking about it this morning. The Prabhupada says, surrender with your intelligence, but don't surrender your intelligence. So surrender through. So we use our intelligence and we think, how can I execute the process of Krishna consciousness very nicely? How can I be more efficient in these ways? We think about that. And then we apply that. But it's not that we give up everything and we just don't think anymore. Some things we don't need to think about, or we could put on the back burner, but we should be thinking how to surrender. So I'll conclude this by reading a verse and a purport from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And let me see here. I guess there were some other things I wanted to go through, but out of time. So this verse is an amazing verse. It's also quoted in the Bhagavad Gita in Sarvadharma Parichaya. It's from the, I believe it's quoted, I know it's quoted in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, but anyways, it's right here. Chaitanya Charitamrita. So anukul yasya sankalpa pradikul yasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvashva goptritve varanam tata atma ikshepa karpyante sadvidha saranagatihi. The translation is as follows. The 6 divisions of surrender are the acceptance of those things favorable to devotional service, the rejection of unfavorable things, the conviction that Krishna will give protection, the acceptance of the Lord as one's guardian or master, full surrender, and humility. Then the purport is very nice. I'll just read this.
Which number?
This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 100. So purport. One who is fully surrendered is qualified with the 6 following characteristics. 1. The devotee has to accept everything that is favorable for the rendering of transcendental loving service to the Lord. 2. He must reject everything unfavorable to the Lord's service. This is also called renunciation. 3. The devotee must be firmly convinced that Krishna will give him protection. No one else can actually give protection, and being firmly convinced of this is called faith. This kind of faith is different from the faith of an impersonalist who wants to merge into the Brahman effulgence in order to benefit by cessation of repeated birth and death. A devotee wants to remain always in the Lord's service. In this way, Krishna is merciful to his devotee and gives him all protection from the dangers found on the path of devotional service. 4. The devotee should accept Krishna as his supreme maintainer and master. He should not think that he is being protected by a demigod. He should depend only on Krishna, considering him the only protector. The devotee must be firmly convinced that within the 3 worlds he has no protector or maintainer other than Krishna. 5. Self-surrender means remembering that one's activities and desires are not independent. The devotee is completely dependent on Krishna, and he acts and thinks as Krishna desires. 6. The devotee is meek and humble. Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham hrisani visto matashmitir jnanam apohanam cha Vedas sarvar ahameva vidyo vedanta krid videva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. I thought this last part was very interesting. Seated in everyone's heart, Krishna deals differently according to the living entity's position. The living entity's position is to be under the protection of the illusory energy or under Krishna's personal protection. When a living entity is fully surrendered, he is under the direct protection of Krishna, and Krishna gives him all intelligence by which he can advance in spiritual realization. The non-devotee, however, being under the protection of the illusory energy, increasingly forgets his relationship with Krishna. Sometimes it is asked how Krishna causes one to forget. Krishna personally causes his devotee to forget material activities, and through the agency of Maya, Krishna causes the non-devotee to forget his devotional service to the Lord. This is called apohana. So we can understand also that other aspects of apohana, so forgetfulness. So you may think, oh, Krishna made me forget the verse or whatever. But another aspect, Krishna made me forget these material desires. I mean, I'm sure there's so many things previously coming to Krishna consciousness that I already remember some. I remember there were so many different things I was fired up about, coming into the temple, this and that, and then I just forgot. And then it was just like, it was like so fired up to get a job at one point. Like you get a job, get work, get some money, and then I just forgot about the whole thing. And then that's that. And so Krishna will help us, it's like, so that sometimes we I have all these desires in my heart, how can I overcome them? We regularly hear, we regularly chant, and then naturally we'll forget, and then we'll be like, oh man, that was like, I don't even remember, I was struggling so much with this in my mind, and then it's just like, it's gone. I experienced that especially when I go on a Harinam or book distribution or something, my mind is like here and there, and then I go out and then just like, it's just gone, whatever it was. And a lot of devotees had that experience with Srila Prabhupada. So anyways, I'll stop there, and I'll take like 1 or 2 questions if there's any.
Just comments like this is the Prabhupada book marathon, and so some devotees we try to sell the books so that the conditioned souls can benefit by Prabhupada's mercy and Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And so there's different things that devotees say so that people will take a book. And I was just meditating on my experience, my personal experience distributing books when I was a young whippersnapper. And one of them was like I was in a parking lot, and this couple, they saw me coming to their car. They were outside the car, and they said something like, "Oh, you're in a cult," or something like that. So then I replied to them, "Can you please forgive me?" They were like Christians. That's what they did. So I asked them if they could forgive me. I thought that was pretty funny. They didn't take the book, but anyhow.
They couldn't forgive you? Did they forgive you?
And of course, we all know that if we do come in contact with Christians or diehard religionists from other denominations, we can always say that this book will make you a better blank, blank, blank Christian or Buddhist or whatever like that also. So, that's all I can think about right now.
I like how you go to the Sangha Sanjay Te Kama, where it's usually, we were in Harinam, and then like there was this couple, and they were like in a horrible, like it was nasty, like argument. The girl was crying and the guy was dying.
I think I remember
And this was recently. I went up to Krishna Prabhu and I was like, Sangha Sanjay Te Kama Kama Kuru Vijayate. Like he was laughing. But then like I like how you use, like when we associate, through association, you can also get the karma, for something higher. I was thinking sometimes we read books by like these really fired up devotees about book distribution. I think you know which books I'm thinking about. And like just by getting that association, you get like really fired up. Like you listen to, even when you read Prabhupada's books, you get so fired up. Like people need to know about this. So just really appreciating your realization about the Sangha Sanjay Te Kama.
Talking about wealth, back home in Australia, one of our devotees is a Welshman, and he was in London, and he was meeting with an associate of his, and he owned a Lamborghini, and he told him one time that when one of his tires got punctured, he would have to replace the whole set, all four.
Oh my God!
And so it would cost him like $5,000. just to replace one tire, you know.
Such a waste of money.
It's such a waste, you know.
Well, we can use all the money for Krishna service. So we understand that Krishna gives the wealth, but Prabhupada also too. Last point I'll make. He would often tell devotees to not just have money sitting there to use it. And so in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would always have the months in debt.
Yeah.
And even in Krishna consciousness, a lot of money they bring this false sense of security. And we think, oh, I don't have to work so hard, or it's okay, you know, I can take the day off, I can relax. And also too, when there's a lot of money, it can get wasted very easily. Because then we think, you know, then we start buying stuff that we don't need, you know, whatever it might be. You know, and we think, oh, I need whatever, I need this, I don't know, something useless. I don't know, something useless that people buy. I need the latest iPhone, you know, because I need to swipe squares, you know, real quick. And then you just
The latest phone.
the latest $3,000 phone or something. But anyways,
I had the oldest one. 6.
Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Ki Jai.
His Grace Kalki Prabhu ki jai.
Right.